Yo, what is happening, guys? Welcome back to your Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year's to everybody. Um, just kidding. Not Happy New Year's to anybody. It's not New Year's yet. But we're here. We're doing it. We're back. We're back again. It's a week after Christmas. Things are, I guess, back to normal in this country. Or I guess we're back to living our everyday lives. There's nothing more exciting to talk about, right? I guess we have New Year's coming up, and then we have vaccines coming out. But, dude, it's one of those days, man, where I have so many. It's today is the day that this podcast is going to be everywhere, every direction. I'm going to make up my own directions. It's going to be a very unorganized podcast. And I think it's official for me. I'm a podcast guy who likes one ear on, one ear off when I do the show. I can hear the outside voices. I can also hear my own voice, it's very hard to explain to somebody, especially if you don't do podcasts, if you're not in the podcasting world, or if you don't do your own podcast, it's a very difficult thing to explain. But when you wear one headphone, or when you wear headphones, what it does is it allows you to feel your voice, I guess, is a lack of better terms. I can feel my voice. I can hear my own voice. I don't hear the noise, but I feel the vibrations. So that's really trippy, but that's just what it is. I mean, that's just what it is, you know? I can feel my own voice. But welcome back to the holidays. Jesus Christ, that last podcast was rough, man. I don't rewatch my podcast, but as I'm editing them up, I watch segments, and oh my God, it had to be the most boring podcast in the world. I was just broken. But also at the same time, I think a lot of people, well, I would hope they don't listen anymore if they think it's boring, but I think this podcast can get a very maybe repetitive, to say the lack of better terms, but I'm a creature of habit, so I like it. So a few things I want to get into, just a quick summary. First of all, I want to give a big shout out to my sister and Sam, my sister's boyfriend, who went ahead and got this piece of artwork for me. I went ahead and kept the Christmas lights up behind me. I like them. I'm going to eventually take them down, but for the meantime, I'm going to keep them up there. I like the way they look. They spruce up the show. They add different colors, but I'm going to keep them up. But this is really cool. It says Michael Labs Podcast. This is a really neat thing. I feel like I got one for my clothing company too. I'm not sure. I don't know. There's no place I can really put it. Maybe here. Maybe I could put it there. I'll put it there for it. Yeah, I knew that was going to happen. I have no place to put it right now, but I will make it pretty. I will apply it to the wall, and it will look very good. But yeah, I had a few things. First thing I want to show you guys something. So I got these new slippers for Christmas, these lamb slippers, and I don't know, it's kind of, well, I guess for the general person, if you say lamb fur, I think the average person is that's inhumane. It can't be something that should be backed by PETA, furring off, I guess a lot of people think that you kill a lamb to get the fur, but these slippers are very comfortable. I'm not much of a slippers guy. I think it's a little weird that the goal of slippers is to keep your feet warm, and when your feet get warm, they sweat. So you're just kind of walking in sweat, furry sweat. Moist, soggy fur is around your skin on your feet. So it's kind of a weird concept. I guess it makes sense if it's really cold and it's not too warm that it's making your feet sweat, but it is warm enough to keep your feet warm, but without sweat. But I'm putting them on for the podcast. I'm breaking out the military shirt. And by the way, this is not military. It's just camo. But I have a lot of notes here. I got a lot of things there's a lot of things I want to talk about, and everything right now is just affecting all my OCD, all my ADD. It's kind of like all over the place. There's so many different topics I really want to get into, but there's too many. Like there's not just one. There's like it's kind of all over the place, and there's one big secret I'm hiding from everybody that I really want to talk about, but I don't want to do it yet because the thing that I want to discuss on the show might not be completed until the next episode. So I don't want to start talking about something and completely be wrong on it. But there is the main point of this episode is I want to talk about psychedelics. I want to talk about drugs. I want to talk about legalization of drugs. I want to talk about my unprofessional opinion towards drugs. And I also want to put a huge asterisk next to everything. 2 huge asterisks, which I think are very important. 1, not an expert. I have no medical background. I have no education. I have no firsthand experience. As a second asterisk is I've never done a drug. I've taken Adderall, prescribed Adderall. I'm very open about that stuff. I don't know is that normal? Is that normal? I feel like I'm very open on a lot of things. Is it normal for people to talk? I'm not embarrassed by it, but I think a lot of people just don't like to talk about. I guess I'm actually delusional because most people don't have a podcast. Most people definitely, if they do have a podcast, it's not just a solo episode every time where they just talk about their own life. Because I guess not everyone's a fucking full-blown narcissist like I am. I'm just kidding. I don't think I'm a narcissist. I just think this is fun to do. So I do it. And I think I'm very comfortable in front of a camera, and I'm very comfortable talking, and I'm very comfortable being wrong, and it doesn't rub me the wrong way. And it's like, I love learning, and I know for me, the best way to learn is to say things that are wrong so I can get the right answer, obviously, because if you are constantly thinking things that you think are right, but they're wrong, and you just keep them in your head, the fear of being wrong you will perpetuate that cycle, and you will constantly think wrong things, and it just makes you look dumb. So I like to verbally express things, and sometimes they're completely off the mark. And in those situations, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. I quickly became wrong rather than becoming wrong in a slower amount of time, which would lead me down a path of compounding my wrongness. I was able to put the end to it, and I stopped being wrong earlier than later, hence the podcast. But as I was saying, I forget what I was saying. Jesus, this is what I'm saying. Like, this is very aggressive. I have, like, my ADD is all over the place. Oh yeah, never done a drug. Never even consumed marijuana in any form. Yes, I'm a square. Never tried any psychedelics. I've never done any shrooms. I've never done like LSD, ecstasy. I've taken Adderall, which was prescribed, but that is definitely a drug. That's meth. That's legal meth. I've taken Advil. I drank alcohol a few times. I probably drank alcohol 20 times in my life. I'm 24 years old. So basically what I'm trying to say is I'm not somebody who enjoys the process of going from sober to not sober. Like, not being sober is fine, but the little bridge in the middle is not fine. Like that's what puts me on edge the most is, well, I may never come back from this, or there may be some serious shit that goes down where I cannot be in an intoxicated state, and I will screw myself up, and somebody I know will die because I was slightly intoxicated, which definitely is not healthy. That, and also, I feel like the way I am perceiving reality already is in a very you remember like those, Remember like those hexagon things that you look into? They're like an Oculus thing with a bunch of little shapes and colors. I feel like I'm already perceiving the world more similar to that than I would be than a sober state. So I already feel like I'm slightly uh, uh, looking at the world from a view of someone who is slightly intoxicated, but I'm not intoxicated, and I'm not under the influence of anything. So, but I'm hyper fascinated with drugs. I am, and I don't really like the word drugs. I like, I don't know an alternative word for drugs. Synonym for drugs, because it has such a negative connotation to it. Medicine, medication, remedy, cure, antidote, nostrum, potion, elixir. Yeah, I like that word, elixir. Because drugs has such a negative connotation. I said something. Let me pull this up on my Instagram, and this is what I want to get into for this episode. I want to talk about this absolutely stunning. I could just look it up. Can I? No, I can't. I think I gotta look it up on my phone. I read this absolutely stunning book. I think I mentioned a little bit in the last episode. I've kind of been slowing down with the amount of reading I've been doing. And it's not because the only reason why is because I've just been kind of focused on other things. And when I'm not in school, which I think this is opposite for a lot of people, when I'm not in school, I don't read. I feel like I don't read as much, because when I'm in school, I'm already studying and working and reading as much as I possibly can in school. So it kind of, I don't have it here. I gotta find it. Maybe it's in my archive section. So I kind of been slacking on reading, but I picked it back up. I've only read like 2 books in the past month, and I finished Denial of Death, which I read on the podcast, not completely. But I also went ahead and finally finished the book, The Food of the Gods, The Search for the Original Tree of Knowledge, A Radical History of Plants, Drugs, and Human Evolution, written by the great Terrence McKenna, who left this earth, I don't know, he left this earth way too young. That's all I do have to say. He was an American ethnobiologist. He died at the age of 54 years old. Death cause. Terrence McKenna, who so playfully and persistently pressed his message that psychedelic drugs are mankind's salvation, that Timothy Leary himself christened him. The Timothy Leary of the 90s died on Monday at a friend's home. The cause of the death was brain cancer. So he died way too young, 54 years old. There's plenty of beautiful works by him. I'm gonna read a lot more of his works. I mean, so much so that Timothy Leary looked up to him. And Timothy Leary, I don't know if you guys know who Timothy Leary is, but Timothy Leary was a Harvard dude. He was an American psychologist and writer known for his strong advocacy of psychedelic drugs. Evaluations of Leary are polarized, ranging from bold oracle to publicity hound. He was a hero of American consciousness, according to Allen Ginsberg, and Tom Robbins called him a brave neuronaut. Like, I think Tim, it's kind of sad, honestly. It's actually very sad to watch the world that we live in now, which is becoming more and more pro use of psychedelics for health, for just daily usage, just allowing people the choice to enjoy these mind-altering substances. There was guys, like Terrence McKenna and Timothy Leary, and just these guys who were such proponents of it. But and there's a lot of things, but the world that we lived in during their time period, the subculture was supportive of it. But the subculture in this country, this is probably across all countries, because culture, by the definition of culture is what is perceived as the most popular thing. And popularity isn't a numbers game. Popularity is what has the loudest voice. It used to be a numbers game. and I think it could be a numbers game, but with the certain positions that people can obtain in this country through the use of dirty ways of getting to those positions, you don't have to be popular. You just got to have a loud, aggressive voice. And this is what happened with drugs in this country. Like, this book it's mind altering to think about just the history that drugs have in humankind. Like, I've talked about like stoned ape theory before, and I've talked about his work before, but like just going back to like religions, the bases of religions, the bases of different tribes across the world, so much so that you can still go to certain places in this world and watch ancient tribes rip lines of, DMT. They smoke DMT. They go to these mind-altering places. And it's just so sad to think that because of a few people, a few politicians in this country, not even scientists, but just people who had power, were able to strip away freedom from so many people, because we live in this country where alcohol is deemed a party. It's a focal point at parties. It's the focal point of a good time. When you think of fun, you think of alcohol. You think of this mind-altering, suicidal weapon that you could use to kill yourself. Something that is a weapon used in the hands of somebody who is not responsible, aka drunk driving. This thing that takes an absolute ravage upon your liver and leads to death. Not, I don't know, I'm just making up this number, not a professional, but 90% of the time. It's very hard to make it out of this world if you are a heavy drinker of this poison, this legal poison that makes people billionaires, to make it out of this world without having that drug be a part, even a 1% part of your death. And we just accept it to be it. It's a normal thing, but it's not a normal thing. And I'm gonna bring up a few. There's a few things I do want to read. I went ahead and put this quote up yesterday. This is just for me. This is just off the top of my head, and this is gonna be a good beginning to. And this is a podcast I want people to hear. So if you know somebody, please send them to this episode. I think this is a very important episode. I'm gonna title it like "War on Drugs" because it's something that I get interested in a lot of things. I find passion in a lot of things, but it's very rare for me to get to the point where I feel so much passion where I really, really am willing to do a lot to make a serious change. And I don't know if that characteristic makes me a weak individual. I don't know. I haven't really analyzed it too much, but this is something that I with every inch of my body, I don't like. So this is just a quote I put up, and it sounds like, oh, Mike, you're a hippie. I guess I'm a hippie in that sense, but tobacco's legal and alcohol's legal. Two drugs that will kill you. Or will heavily increase the chances of death being closer around the corner than if you didn't consume those two hellish ingredients. So I just put this up on my Instagram story yesterday, or I don't know, not whatever, timestamp, whatever. I think I put it up on Sunday. I said, quote, "The war on drugs will never end. It was never designed to end. It allows the educated and the rich to become wealthier, while at the same continues to destroy and ravage the uneducated and less wealthy. The war needs to end." So I put that up yesterday, or I don't know, Sunday, whatever. You guys are listening on Tuesday. I put it up Sunday, and I want to continue with this. So I went ahead and I saved a few pages in this beautiful book. I'm telling you guys, I didn't treat this book with respect. I've read a few pages, like 10 pages a day, and I kind of put it down for like a week, 2 weeks. I think I started it on Thanksgiving, so it's taken me like a whole month to read this book, which is, I usually knock books out in like 3 weeks, but this book is a book that you should knock out in 2 days. It really is that good. And Terrence Mckenna is still alive. His brother, dude, if I could speak to him, it would be absolutely amazing because those guys are so brave. But I want to just read a few passages from this book, and each time I read a passage, I want to give my honest opinion on it, or not. I want to give a summary from my perspective of this certain passage I read. And I think there's going to be like 3 or 4. I got them right here just by pages, but let's go ahead and start, man. Let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start off with, the way he does this is he has this ability to he had this ability to break it down in a very, very organized manner, like natural synthetic drugs, wine and women, nostalgia for paradise, alcohol and honey. So I'm going to read a few pages here, and yeah, we're going to get started. And also, I highly recommend this book. And look, I don't know if reading pages on a podcast is a normal thing. I don't know if it's even legal, but it's my podcast, so I do what I want. Okay, so I don't even know. Oh, by the way, and he uses a lot of words that I probably will screw up. So this is a sub paragraph under alcohol and the alchemy of spirit, which is on chapter 9. Alcohol and the alchemy of spirit. This is weird. I feel like I'm a teacher, like reading to the class, but the class is people that I don't know. Okay, so he's talking about alcohol here. Let me go ahead and set up this mic so it's easier for me to read. Okay, so no other drug has had such a prolonged detrimental effect on human beings. The struggle to produce, control, and tax alcohol and to absorb its social consequences is a significant part of the story of the evolution of the mercantile empires of the 18th and 19th centuries. Alcohol and slavery often went hand in hand across the economic landscape. In many cases, alcohol literally was slavery, as the triangular trade of slaves, sugar, and rum and other practices of European civilization spread over the earth, subjugating other cultures. Sugar and the alcohol that could be made from it became a European obsession that severely distorted the demographics of tropical regions. For example, in the Dutch East Indies, now Indonesia, colonial policy paid women to produce as many children as possible in order to provide workers for the labor-intensive cultivation of sugar. So they paid, so they had so much control over sugar, and alcohol was so valuable at this time that in order to increase productivity of the sugar and alcohol, you need more men. And so what they did is they paid women to basically have sex and make babies. So it was like capitalism met prostitution at a grand scale to produce a higher profit because alcohol was bringing in so much, which is crazy. Which is kind of a similarity to the world that we live in now, in some manners. The modern legacy of this policy is that Java, formerly the center of the Dutch East Indies, is today the most overpopulated large island in the world. So you can see the long-term effects of this. Most of the sugar ended up as distilled alcohol, and what was not exported to Europe was consumed by the local population. A besotted underclass was a permanent fixture of mercantile society, whether in the home countries or the colonies. So what wasn't sold was given to the underclass, the kids that were offsprings from the paid moms to have babies. And to this day, there's still side effects from this, from the excess amount of babies being produced. The company gets what they want. They roll out, no more money coming in. Alcohol is extra. So now you have a whole society of drunks because they were brought up this way, and there's no money coming in because all the money left with the alcohol. And what of the psychology of alcohol? And what of the psychology of alcoholism and alcohol use? Is there a gestalt of alcohol? And if there is, then what are its characteristics? I have implied that alcohol is the dominator drug par excellence. Alcohol has the effect of being libidinally stimulating at moderate doses. Libido, I think he's trying to say like the act of personifying libido, which is a sexual hormone, stimulating at moderate doses at the same time that the ego feels empowered and social boundaries are felt to lose some of the restraining power. Often these feelings are accompanied by a sense of verbal facility ordinarily out of reach. The difficulty with all this is that research findings suggest these fleeting effects are usually followed by a narrowing of awareness, a diminishing of ability to respond to social cues, and an infantile regression into loss of sexual performance, loss of general motor control, and consequent loss of self-esteem. Moderation in drinking seems the obvious course, yet alcoholism is a major and unremitting problem throughout global society. I believe, Terrence Mckenna, I believe that the alcohol abuse syndrome is symptomatic of the state of disequilibrium and tension existing between men and women and between the individual and society. Alcoholism is a condition of ego obsession and inability to resist the drive toward immediate gratification. The social domain in which the repression of women in the feminine is most graphically and brutally realized is that of the drunken episode or lifestyle. The darkest expression of the terror and the anxiety engendered by severance from the maternal matrix have traditionally been acted out there. Wife beating without alcohol is like a circus without lions. That's a wild statement. Isn't that crazy? But basically what he's saying is that alcohol is something that can be directly related to the patriarchy in a very uneducated way for me trying to translate it. Alcohol and the feminine. The suppression of the feminine has been associated with the use of alcohol since very early times. One manifestation was the restriction of alcohol use to men. According to Lewin, women in ancient Rome were not allowed to drink wine. It's kind of fascinating when you think about what is legal. Well, the things that are legal today are the things that are dominated by men. Alcohol and cigarettes, characteristics of men over centuries since the day that those things were developed. I find that very fascinating. And what he said about alcohol is you would never find a wife beater. I guess you would. But wife beaters are always drunk. And I find that super fascinating that we see these like horrific accidents because of alcohol. So much so that it's an assumption that if you see a woman get beat, the guy was drunk. So much so that in the court of law, and this is just from taking the same class 3 times because I failed it twice and didn't take the final, which is something I need to talk about, or I don't need to talk about because Towson probably watches these podcasts. That there is in the court of law, if you've had too much to drink, inebriated, whatever it is, to the point where you sign a contract or if you do something, but you're too heavily intoxicated, that contract is void. That's so fascinating to me. That's so fascinating to me because if someone is under the influence of heroin and they commit a crime, they're under the influence of a drug, right? They're still under the influence of a drug. But this drug is illegal. But alcohol is legal. So one contract is void and the other one's not. When Ignatius Maecenas' wife drank wine from a barrel, he beat her to death. He was later acquitted. Pompilia Faenus had his wife whipped to death because she had drunk his wine. And yet another Roman woman of the gentry was condemned to die of hunger merely because she had opened the cupboard wherein were kept the keys to the wine cellar. Dominator-style hatred of women, general sexual ambivalence, and anxiety in alcohol culture conspire to create the peculiarly neurotic approach to sexuality that categorizes European civilization. Gone are the boundary-dissolving hallucinogenic orgies that diminished the ego of the individual and reasserted the values of extended family in the tribe. So, as you see, hallucinogens fade, a bliss of ecstasy fades, is replaced by alcohol, increases anger. we get into medieval times. I love how he says, gone are the boundary-dissolving hallucinogenic orgies, multiple people having sex through the use of ecstasy, LSD, whatever, a certain plant that diminish the ego, right? Ego is heightened under the influence of alcohol, right? Under the influence of hallucinogens, it's diminished, as Terrence Mckenna says, of the individual and reasserted the values of the extended family in the tribe. In a weird way, orgies do. I guess they do. Never been part of one, but I guess they would do that, right? Make everyone feel like a family. The dominant response to the need to release sexual tension in the ambience of alcohol is the dance hall, the bordello, and the institutionalized expansion of a new underclass of the fallen women. The prostitute is a convenience of the dominator style. With its fear and disgust of women, alcohol and its social institutions create the social space in which the fascination disgust can be acted out without responsibility. That's very fascinating. This is a difficult subject to address. Alcohol is used by millions of people, both men and women, and he did mention earlier that women drink wine, which I find fascinating. Alcohol is used by millions of people, both men and women, and I will make no friends by taking the position that alcohol culture is not politically correct. Yet, how can we explain the legal toleration for alcohol, the most destructive of all intoxicants, and the almost frenzied efforts to repress nearly all other drugs? I guess he's speaking by the companies themselves, the alcohol producing companies. I guess fight politicians to go against other drugs. Could it not be that we are willing to pay the terrible toll that alcohol extracts because it is allowing us to continue the repressive dominator style that keeps us all infantile and irresponsible participants in a dominant world characterized by the marketing of gratified sexual fantasy? So this is a part where I'm like, it's pretty I guess you gotta think very abstractly here. So basically what he's saying, the way I interpret it is basically what he's saying is that, so we all know, let me just start. We all know the guy who, if you see at a bar, he's talking about his high school glory days. He's probably divorced. He's probably fat, overweight, doesn't take care of himself. But you can tell that he's constantly trying to one up somebody. He's constantly trying to peacock. Now, I guess what Terrence Mckenna is saying is that is what runs the world. That very aggressive, wannabe, aggressive masculine energy. And through the use of alcohol, it allows that to continuously come up. It allows it to. It's really hard for me to explain because in my head it makes perfect sense what he's saying. And I guess you could make an argument for the part where he said alcohol is very destructive. I guess you can kind of make an argument. Well, yeah, it's very destructive because it's a probability game, and for the most part, it's not as destructive as Mike you're saying or as Terrence Mckenna is saying. And I guess I would agree with you, but I also think that just at a chemical level, what alcohol does is leads to violence rather than some other psychoactive drugs will not lead to violence. But I find that he's just, the way he strings his words together, it's very fascinating, and how the use of alcohol leads to so many other things. Brothels and men with this excessive amount of power, and then using it. No, you cannot be part of this club because this club is for alcohol, for men, and men drink alcohol. I find this so brilliant. There's a few more. I'm probably going to read one more page. There's 3 more pages I want to read, but I'm probably just going to read one more. I think it's just this page. Yeah. Okay, so this is Cannabis. So which we read a little bit about alcohol, but this is Cannabis as a culture style. Dude, reading it's fun, man. I promise you my Thursday episode won't be nearly as I guess this episode isn't intense either, but I got I want to talk about a gift I got on Thursday. But in the meantime, we're going to learn about cannabis and alcohol and the patriarchy and alcohol and its relationship with the patriarchy. Okay, so cannabis as a cultural style. Oman touches here on a very fruitful theme. The degree to which the style and way of life of an entire culture can be imbued with the attitudes and assumptions engendered by a particular psychoactive plant or drug. There is something to the notion that the architectural styles and design modus of Mughal Dali or 10th century Isfahan are somehow derivative of or inspired by the visions of Hashish. And Hashish is it's basically a, okay, I have internet right here. Goddamn, Mike, it's 2020. Dummy. Hashish. Hashish is known as hash, is a drug made by compressing and processing trichomes of the cannabis plant. It's consumed by smoking, typically in a pipe, bong, vaporized, or joint, sometimes via oral ingestion. So it's hash. It's just straight marijuana, essentially, and it's been around for a while. So that's what he's saying by hashish. Hashish. I think Syria. I don't know. And there is something to the notion that alcohol channeled the development of social forms and culture self-image in feudal Europe. Aesthetic assumption and styles are indices of the level and kind of understanding and awareness that a society sanctions. Each plant relationship will tend to accentuate some concerns and diminish others. Outpourings of style and aesthetically managed personal display are usually an anthema to the nuts and bolts mentality of dominator cultures. In dominator cultures, without any living traditions of use of plants that dissolve social conditioning, such displays are usually felt to be the prerogative of women. Men who focus on such concerns are often assumed to be homosexuals. That is, they are not following the accepted canons of male behavior within the dominator model. The longer hair lengths for men seen with the rise of marijuana use in the United States in the 1960s were a textbook case of an influx of apparently feminine values accompanying the use of a boundary-dissolving plant. So he's saying that cultures, I think what he's trying to say is that one of the reasons why marijuana specifically is not accepted in this country is due to people relate it with being gay, because you develop feminine personality traits instead of just aggressive masculine alcohol traits. The hysterical reaction to such a minor adjustment in folkways revealed the insecurity and sense of danger felt by the male ego in the presence of any factor that might tend to restore the importance of partnership in human affairs. In this context, it is interesting to note that cannabis occurs in both a male and a female form. This is fascinating. This is just weird how things work. And it is identification, care, and propagation of the female of the species that is the total concern of the grower instead of grower interested in the neurotic power of the plant. This is because the resin is the exclusive product of the female plant. Not only do males not produce a usable drug, but if the pollen from the male reaches females, the females will begin to set seed and will cease the production of resin. It is thus a kind of happy coincidence that the subjective effects of ingesting cannabis and the care and attention needed to produce a good resin strain both conspired to accentuate values that are oriented toward honoring and preserving the feminine. Of all the pandemic plant toxins inhabiting the earth, cannabis is second only to mushrooms in its promotion of the social values and sensory ratios that typified the original partnership societies. How else are we to explain the unrelenting persecution of cannabis use in the face of overwhelming evidence that of all the intoxicants ever used, cannabis is among the most benign? Its social consequences are negligible compared with those of alcohol. Cannabis is anathema to the dominator culture because it deconditions or decouples users from accepted values. Because of its subliminally psychedelic effect, cannabis, when pursued as a lifestyle, places a person in an intuitive contact with less goal-oriented and less competitive behavior patterns. For these reasons, marijuana is unwelcomed in the modern office environment, while a drug such as coffee, which reinforces the values of industrial culture, is both welcomed and encouraged. Cannabis use is correctly sensed as heretical and deeply disloyal to the value of the male dominance and stratified hierarchy. Legalization of marijuana is thus a complex issue since it involves legitimating a social factor that might ameliorate or even modify ego-dominant values. That's crazy. Like this idea of picking and choosing certain drugs. Like, yeah, we can't have marijuana because then our people might question what we do. Like, yeah, we can't have marijuana because then people might start thinking of other ways that we should run things, or we might not feel like we need the government or we need our boss to provide everything. There might be a different way to get certain things. But if we want to keep producing, which is, I'm such a hypocrite because I buy stocks. Like, I'm all in on it. Like, I'm all in on it. Like, Terrence Mckenna would be disappointed with me. But like in order to make our employees work better and faster, so we can, essentially increase a higher profit margin, we enjoy caffeine and sugar, these things that make you work more aggressive. Coffee allows you to work longer, concentrate more. We're all about efficiency, which is kind of plays in the male dominant patriarchy industrialization of the world. And I don't totally agree with all this. I just like reading about just different things. I don't want to ever be the guy where exactly my opinion on something. Legalization and taxation of cannabis would provide a tax base that could help clean up the national deficit. Instead, we continue to hurl millions of dollars into marijuana eradication, a policy that creates suspicion and a permanent criminal class in communities that are otherwise among the most law-abiding in the country. I'm going to have a conversation with a guest on my podcast sometime next month about that. Maybe at the beginning of February is when it's going to come out, but the conversation is going to happen in probably late January. As indicated, the society's contempt for the cannabis user is a thinly disguised contempt for the values of community and the feminine. How else to explain the media's need to endlessly repudiate the psychedelic drug use and underground social experiments of the 60s? The fear that the flower children engendered in the establishment becomes understandable when analyzed in the light of the idea that what confronted the establishment was an outbreak of genderless partnership thinking based on a diminished sense of self-importance. So there's just a couple sub chapters about cannabis and alcohol, but I think it's brilliantly written. I think it's very thought provoking too, because I know for me, I used to be very anti cannabis. Like I really was. I was like, it's fucking terrible. It's a gateway drug. But the older I get, the more I realize that's just not right, and I was wrong by that. And I think it's something that has beautiful benefits and with very minimal side effects. Not saying that they're not there. Like you can definitely, there's always a risk of consuming anything. People kind of, like sugar is probably the worst drug this world has. It is the worst drug that this world has ever seen. It really is. Like it's so bad because it's biologically ruins you, but at the same time, socially and culturally, it's the most accepted thing in the world. So much so that we have holidays that are wrapped around this drug, like pumpkin pie, apple pie, like July 4th, Thanksgiving, just for example, ice cream, summertime. Like this drug is so deeply ingrained into our society that we actually celebrate it. But it kills more people each year than fentanyl and heroin and alcohol. Like it kills. I don't know how many people die each year of sugar related illness. I mean, diabetes, obesity. So in Science Now, the Los Angeles Times reports that consumption of sugar-sweetened drinks appear to claim that's just sugar-sweetened drinks claim the lives of 25,000 American adults yearly and is linked worldwide to the deaths of 180,000 people. So how many people die each year of diabetes? So diabetes relative to sugar, about 80,000. Year of obesity. Okay. Wow. Oh my God. April 1st, 2020. Obesity has reached epidemic proportions globally with at least 2.8 million people dying each year as a result of being overweight or obese. And I would say, I would, once again, not an expert. I would go out on a limb. I don't think this is actually going out on a limb here. I would say 90% of that is due to sugar, due to carbs. Carbs are sugar. And we just kind of like imagine how many people have died of COVID. United States. I need worldwide. Mr. Worldwide. Okay. Wow. Okay. So we have from March 19th. Damn it. When was the first case? The first death? According to, what is this? Wikipedia, which is tracking the deaths of COVID. The first death was reported on January 21st. So let's just round up and say we've had a whole year of COVID. A whole year of COVID has only, and when I say only, I don't mean like this isn't a lot of people. This is a shit ton of people. But 1.77 million people have died of COVID this year. Obesity has reached epidemic proportions globally with at least 2.8 million people dying each year as a result of being overweight or obese. Look, I'm not saying that coronavirus isn't a big deal. It's a big fucking deal. We know that. We're not dumb. We're aware of that. But the use of certain drugs that we just go along with that are okay, one of them being sugar, is tearing this world apart. It's also really bad because, like I said, it's celebrated. Cereal is something that you just eat for breakfast. Why do we eat cereal for breakfast? Nothing about it biologically should be put in our bodies. Ever. But we just eat sugar. We just eat cereal like it's going out of style. And then the side effects are like depression, anxiety, and panic attacks, and like bad skin, and like all these things that we're like, oh fuck, well this is that. And then we take other things to reduce those, cholesterol. We cover it up, and then also socially we protect it by saying, well, if you call someone fat, or if you even talk about someone's body, you're an evil person, you're outcasted. It's terrible. It's almost like sugar's as protected as alcohol is, but sugar kills so many more people than alcohol. I'm telling you, it's the one drug that is the most evil drug this world has ever seen, and it will go down. If we ever do get to the point where we become robots can be like, what were they doing? It's not like they were hungry, but they just kept eating. And look, I am a victim. I am more guilty of it than most people. I understand it's a drug. I'm addicted to it. It's an emotional thing. I love it. I love eating a lot of food, up to the point where the reason why I eat a lot of food is because I like feeling like shit. Like, I like to eat a lot of disgusting food. But by taking that power away from the food and learning that the reason why I love it is because I'm an addict and I'm addicted to it, dude, you can change the world. We can change the world if we just put the end to a high carb diet. Look at me. I sound like I'm just, hey, Paul Saladino, come out of the closet now, buddy. We're going to talk about carnivore diet. No, but I'm serious. Like, it's important that people... It's important that I think it's important that people read this book, and I think it's also important that people actually know what is killing people. And because it's not like it's hard to fix, it's easy to fix. Just put down the cookies, like stop eating the cereal and eat, a quarter pound of bacon with some eggs, have an occasional avocado. And if you do want something sweet, have a cookie. Or don't even have a cookie. I hate when people say, oh, have one cookie. No, don't have any cookies. Go long enough where you actually want something sweet and then eat like a raspberry and your brain will literally blow up. You blow up. You'll be like, oh my God, that's so naturally sweet. That's a fruit. And it will change your world. It will change the game for you. But I've gone way too long in this podcast. And I got to drink my fake sugar right here. I'm such a hypocrite. I love Diet Coke. I'm addicted. But no, I'm not perfect at all. I don't admit it. I don't ever claim to be. But I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening to the Michael Lab Show, episode 152. We're doing it big. We're taking this thing to the top. And when I say top, I mean mediocrely good. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you guys in episode 153 of the Michael Lab Show. Peace out. See you. Have a beautiful, beautiful Tuesday and Wednesday. I'll catch you guys Thursday, 6 a.m. audio, 3 p.m. YouTube.